to the Thought Cloud podcast. Our guest today is Ian DeValliere. I've known Ian since, golly, I don't even know, since Snows, back in the elementary school days. So Ian's been just always an awesome person, always an amazing student, always really engaged in his community. We're super happy to have him on today. He is going to tell us about where he went to undergraduate. Now he's at Notre Dame studying law, what he hopes to do, what he's learned along the way. Ian, pleasure having you on, my friend. Say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Like you said, the good old days back at Snows. So starting K through 8, getting the whole thing set up. So education starts young, but it carries on forever. So really excited to be here today and help some people out, get to talk a little bit about my education career because it's kind of unique, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of a common thread among other students. So ready to help out any way I can.
Sweet, dude. Well, let's do it. So let's talk after high school. You went to play Division II lacrosse. Tell us a little bit about that journey, where it led to, what that was like.
Yeah, so right out of school, I was got accepted to a pre-dental program at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Loved lacrosse, really wanted to keep playing, and at the time, really thought I was going to be an orthodontist. Clearly worked out well, and I'm in my last year of law school. I got down to Alabama and really loved the school, loved my teammates and everything, but realized kind of early on that I didn't really want to go the dental route. Didn't really love biology or that side of things. Just kind of found out it wasn't for me. Got hurt playing lacrosse and kind of figured out that, if I wanted to kind of transition careers, maybe I needed to find somewhere that was better for me. So I talked to a lot of different people, thought a lot back home, and really was driven to kind of a career in politics and law. So kind of realized that the spot for me was either back home in Reno or out in Washington, D.C., and took a leap of faith and transferred schools to George Washington University. I think I decided to transfer like February of my first year of school, which is kind of late in the process. So I kind of looked at a lot of different schools in DC, figured out one that I thought would be the best for me, and sent out my college apps.
So that was February of your freshman year at Alabama, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
semester was that? Did you start that second semester at George Washington, or did you start it at Alabama?
So I was still in Alabama. So I was getting ready to go through the first year of lacrosse and started playing games and everything set up, and had to get surgery on my hip. So I got hurt, and really before the season really got moving, and I was really kind of comfortable with where I was at, where I was playing, and with everyone down there with my team. But when a big life event like that happens, it kind of makes you kind of take a step back and kind of really look at it from a 1,000-foot point of view. Like, all right, like I'm in a good spot now. I like where I'm at now, but is where I'm at now really what's going to be the best for me for where I want to be down the line? And even though I had a lot of really good friends and everything there, I kind of got my after talking to everybody back home and with what I wanted to do, Huntsville just wasn't really the spot for me.
Definitely. Well, that's tough, when you're putting all your effort and you're aligning yourself to go down one route, and then, like you said, you got some obstacle. Makes you readjust. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of courage to do it. But you readjust it, and here you are, killing it. You're on your way. You are on your way. So you went to George Washington, you studied business, focus on economics, and I think one other thing, if I'm missing it, tell me.
Public policy, yeah.
Policy, that's right. Well, tell us about that then. So that was a completely different time for you than focusing on business and politics and et cetera, et cetera. How'd that all unfold?
Yeah, so that was it was kind of a really cool degree that George Washington offered. It's through the business school, but it's kind of like a mile wide, knee deep. So you really have a lot of different subjects that you're really learning in, practicing for. And I knew that I wanted a career in DC at the time, and was set up to go work for the government, and was doing different internships throughout my entire time there. You're in a really cool position when you're studying in DC, where you can have an internship while you're working and while you're studying. So actually every semester that I had there, I would intern a different spot in DC. So I've kind of bounced around from working on the Hill to working for a trade association and the executive branch of the government, and really was able to kind of learn and figure out what I wanted to do by actually doing it. So it was kind of a cool atmosphere for me. And George Washington had a ton of different resources available, alumni all throughout DC that are there willing to help people find a job and you really get their career moving. And for me, the business school kind of made the most sense because I didn't really know what I wanted exactly to do. So I was like, look, this is a really cool degree. I can get a minor in political science. I can set myself up for, if I wanted to go to law school, I could set myself up for an immediate career working for the government and then maybe transitioning to lobbying down the line. Anything that was really kind of set up for me there for someone with career ADHD that I think I might have a little bit, where I really like doing a lot of different things and meeting a lot of people. So kind of setting that whole structure up at GW was awesome because we have professors that actually worked for these industries or worked for the government or had worked in the government and knew what students were looking for. And I was kind of like in a regulatory track where I was kind of thinking like, hey, maybe this is, I want to go work for an agency or I want to go work for a member of Congress and set myself up for a career that way to where I could go transition to a specific industry or kind of meet people in a spot that I could really, flourish in Washington, D.C. And it's a super cutthroat city and personalities are abundant. And so it's a wild spot to be.
Well, good for you getting yourself into the thick of it. I mean, and I didn't ask this question, but why politics? Why did you like this realm, government? What about it appealed to you?
So it was actually kind of funny. When I was in high school, I was always kind of involved there. I really admired Governor Brian Sandoval at the time. I thought he was doing great things for Nevada and for a lot of people there. And without question, he's somebody who's been influential at almost every step of a lot of people's lives in the home state of Nevada. And for me, all roads always kind of led back to Nevada. I love Nevada, want to be back in Nevada, wanted to find the best way that I could kind of give back to my home state. And so I thought that gaining as much experience in a field that impacts so many people's lives is really something that appealed to me when I was going through this whole process. And so pretty early on, I was always, kind of excited to kind of see how politics worked in our home state and how everybody worked out there to kind of create, legislation that moved through and impacted people's lives and is, in my opinion, the most direct way of helping a large population of people in whatever way you can. And what I thought was missing in a lot of different spots throughout that, in our government and in our time there, are good character people that care about the well-being of others. And so I thought that was kind of the easiest route for me to kind of move myself into a position that I felt that I could bring a new sense of character to this field. And so because I trusted myself and kind of bet on myself that, if I'm ever down the line or in a position that I could help these people in a way, I can bring my morals and my character to this role.
Absolutely. Well, I can vouch for your morals and your character. I've seen this forever. So I mean, I love that. That's awesome. I didn't know that backstory. So that's amazing to hear that. That's amazing to hear that. And it sounds like GW set you up for a lot of success. Like you said, knee deep, mile wide. You got exposure to a lot. As far as leaning in any sort of direction thereafter, after being exposed to so much, what do you find most appealing now? Or are you still juggling a few things? What does that look like for you?
Well, now I think it's kind of a different spot. So I think after I graduated from GW, I worked in politics for a couple of years and saw a lot of the personalities that I knew would be there and kind of balanced with. And for me, there was a ton of exposure that I had early on that kind of showed me that I'd be able to do a lot, but not everything. Obviously, when you're in that role, it's almost concerning for how your work and your mindset kind of like goes everywhere. Your reputation is everything with what you have. And knowing yourself and trusting yourself, when you're tossed into that kind of position, it almost makes you question what's going on with how you think about the world and how you think about different things that are set up there. And so I think there are a lot of very good people that work in Washington, D.C. I also think there are a lot of people that are kind of in this social climber mindset that just really didn't fit too well with me. And so again, that was just kind of an exit point that I saw where I was like, look, like this is your first opportunity to really go back to where you want to make a difference. Like I never really felt like my permanent difference and everything would be made in DC. I always felt like I'd be back home in Reno. So after working for a couple of years, I started, and after COVID, I really kind of took an opportunity to be like, hey, like this is a time where I could work from home, study for the LSAT, get ready, and set myself up for a career in law and in politics back home in Reno. So it was kind of a cool spot where I was like, hey, now I'm granted this almost golden opportunity to focus on your work when you can and to set yourself up in a new position to study for the LSAT, go for a career in law, and make your way back to Nevada. So that's what I did. Started sending off applications, set the whole deal up for law school, and really wanted to make my way in a new field, really back home in my home state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to get into law. We're going to get into what you've been doing at Notre Dame, how you want to tie that all into policy. Before we get there, you talked a lot about the great things that you were able to be exposed to in your undergraduate. As far as undergraduate as a whole, what do you think you could change about undergraduate? If you could change one thing, what do you think you'd change to make it better? Where could it have improved?
So I think there should be a renewed focus on practical work exposure in undergrad. So I think that while there's so much that you can learn in the classroom and there's so much that you can study and practice with professors and to learn, hear their backstory, but learning from a professor who's now an academic and is now in the thick of it, teaching is a really cool way to start learning, but I don't think that's like the full point of your college career. I think that for me, at least, I was using college as a way to figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I wanted to try to test out different pieces of how I could jump to that next spot. And I think that there's a lot of experiences that undergraduate institutions can do with their resources to really kind of create new exposure for students in relationships with internships into the classroom is something that I really think needs to be pushed a lot, especially in business and in politics. Is like it's kind of a cool exposure where you're actually doing groundwork and working in an office and learning to work in a collaborative environment beyond just a group project, beyond just the simulated pieces that are in there. I think as soon as you kind of get that practical work experience tied in, you can really kind of move your way through the fields to find out what really, what you really want to do. And so I think that practical work experience and practical, work that is really important for getting a more well-rounded education that I think a lot of undergraduate institutions could or should kind of move forward with and making more of a priority for their students.
100%. I mean, one way I like to look at it too is, there's a difference between solving a problem that's given to you and then finding how to define the problem and then solving it.
For sure.
So subtle, but so huge. And I've seen it with internships. I've seen it with different, people starting to get into the workforce. And it's an adjustment. And if you're not taught to think like that, or you aren't going out of your way outside the class, or if your classroom isn't offering those exposures, that's hard to pick up on. And boy, yeah, I love what you said. Awesome point. Well, it sounds like you had a great time at George Washington. I mean, you did get exposed to a lot. You did get to think on your feet. You did get to see how to narrow your path. You came back home afterwards, COVID time. You're studying for the LSATs. You obviously got a great score because you're at Notre Dame, dude. Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you.
During the last semester there. And I guess starting with, how did you choose Notre Dame? I guess that's a good place to start. And how has it been since you've been there?
Yeah, well, Notre Dame was a dream school of mine from the time I was a kid. It helps that I had Catholic education, K through 12, and wanted to extend that out a little bit. I think I missed a little bit from GW of faith exposure in the classroom, and that's unique to me. I know that there's a lot of other people that haven't had that type of tie-in of morality and education. And so for me, Notre Dame when you're growing up there, it kind of represents like this pinnacle of like Catholic education. And at the oldest Catholic law school in the country, it was something that, was without a doubt a big part of mine. It also doesn't hurt that we have an awesome football team, and I'm a big Notre Dame football fan. So the easiest application I sent in was my early decision application to Notre Dame. I was looking at a lot of other schools in like the top 24 range, and a little bit back home at UNLV, a few throughout California that could kind of set me out myself up for this role in my new legal career. Notre Dame Law School has probably one of, if not the best faculties in the country. I will stand by that. I had my first year of law school. I had 5 of my 6 doctrinal professors clerk for the Supreme Court. And so like these people that are talking to you and teaching a new way of looking at the law, a new way of understanding the law from something that you really have never had that much exposure to. I feel like the most important thing that I had here at Notre Dame, and in talking to students that went to Notre Dame and talking to people that were going through their first year of law school or in their second year of law school, was understanding how to learn, which I think is kind of a new thought process that you have when you're in your first year of law school. Learning how to learn, learning what works, and learning what will make you a good attorney or a good clerk or whatever your legal career is that you kind of go in afterwards, was something that I knew I would get at the University of Notre Dame. At Notre Dame Law School, we have a lot of people that are committed to helping students and helping others in a really tight-knit kind of family environment. I've heard horror stories of other law schools where, because it's a super competitive environment. I mean, everything about law school is really hyper competitive. The law schools themselves are competing for rank. They're competing for, what firms they're sending their kids to. They're competing for all of this entire process, and you're competing for grades in law school. So at other schools, I heard these stories of, kids ripping out notes in the library, like this entire process of like, fighting for, excluding kids from their study group to focus on an outline or anything like that. And I really kind of was like jaded in the early kind of school search for it. But at Notre Dame, every kid that I talked to about it, they were just like, look, I love the people at Notre Dame. I love the professors at Notre Dame. That's really not there. They don't do class rank. You're still competing for grades, but it's a completely different type of environment. And you're in a spot where you can work with others to learn the law. And the law is not something that you kind of like pick up one day. So you really have to find a way to work with others and figure it out.
Yeah, golly. Well, I mean, I can't imagine that. I've heard the stories as well. I've heard of like, stolen laptops or just cracked screens, whatever it is. How do you have trust in anybody? Especially in the law, you have to have trust in the law, right? How do you have trust in anybody, let alone other lawyers, let alone other people in the space? If they're doing that kind of stuff. Terrible. I'm glad they don't have that at Notre Dame. I'm glad it's the opposite. That's huge. And as far as wrapping your faith-based education into it, wonderful that you get to continue doing that. I know how important that is, especially if you're brought up with it. And I just think that's wonderful. One thing that you touched on was learning how to learn for whatever role that you're trying to get into in law. I think that's interesting, and if you could just touch a little bit on that, because I'm not sure I know exactly what that means, and I'm sure there's people that want to go to law school that are thinking, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I found out at orientation, which was probably a bad time to figure it out, that all of your grades in law school in your first year are based 100% on the final exam. So when you're learning throughout the entire school year, you really don't know how much you know. And so the learning to be secure in the unsecure environment of a classroom like that really is something that was completely new to me. I didn't have any of the Socratic method in undergrad, a little bit of it in a couple classes at Minogue, but really wasn't, or at my high school or our high school, at Bishop Minogue, was kind of dabbled in, but never really was like taught or exposed to you. So the Socratic method here in law school, which has been centuries old tradition, is given your reading assignments, you normally have cases, normally have rules and holdings that are kind of tied in from each case. You prepare ahead of each class. You show up every day for your classes, and you have no idea if you're getting called on or not. So the professor will be up there, call on Mr. DeValliere to come in and give his take on whatever case you have there, and you just got to hope you understood what was going on. And so it's kind of like this anxiety, almost driven way to learn that really is almost how you're going to be practicing as an attorney. You have no idea what a judge is going to ask you a question on if you're in court. You have no idea what a client's going to bring up to you when you're, in your first client introductory meeting. You have no idea what changes are going to come from whatever regulatory agency or judge is bringing down a decision on you that impacts everybody, right? So you have to learn to be safe in a completely unsafe environment. And so the way that you learn how to learn in that type of environment is figuring out what the environment is. And so once you're tied into that classroom environment, you really have to start trusting in yourself and your own education and work to, use the tools that got you to that position to really help you succeed when you're there. And you really don't know until you get those first grades back how it worked for you, or how to, or on an exam in a different environment. And so it's a kind of a crazy way to have it happen, but to me, I loved it. I mean, I loved kind of working through the uncertain to get yourself more up to speed with how to really prepare yourself to become an attorney.
And so as throughout the semester, you're still getting check-in grades, if you would, but it's all that final grade you were saying that matters, right?
We actually really don't get any grades. There's like no checkpoints. So you can kind of have a general understanding of your knowledge when you're going through it, but you really don't have any feedback. Like you don't really, you're in a spot where it's like that final exam and that grade is what you have to do. So the way that most of the law school exams are structured is they're 3 to 4 hour exams. They're hypotheticals that are given to you. You got a fact pattern. You got to apply the law that you had with it. So you normally get to bring in an outline. There are a couple courses that don't let you bring it in. So your entire process throughout the semester is building out your outline for whatever your given class is on what you learned that day, how to apply that rule, and what you can do to help yourself in that exam study to apply the rule that you know. And so the way that I did it my first year is I would handwrite notes in class, or handwrite notes when I was reading, handwrite notes in class, and then at the end of the week, type up everything that I wrote out. So you're learning when you're reading, you're learning when you're in class, and then you're reviewing what you learned when you're reading and you're in class. And then it helps you build this like massive outline that you bring into the exam with you that you really never use, because throughout that entire process, you're preparing yourself, you're understanding every step of the way to where when you're on the exam, you see the issue, spot the issue, write your answer rules down, and apply the law that you learned to the facts that are given to you. And that's really, at the end of the day, what you're doing when you're an attorney. So it's kind of a cool spot.
Really cool spot. Golly, really cool spot. Well, I'm glad you cracked the code. I'm glad you've got a supportive environment for you to be working in. I can't imagine going through that when you've got a bunch of snakes and backstabbers. It's awesome. You've got a great community of people. Really awesome for you to shed light on that. And, if people weren't aware of that, now you know. So getting back to community, though, talk to us about the journal that you're the managing executive editor of. I'm curious what that is. How'd you get involved?
Yeah.
What have you guys been doing? It's got to be, pretty neat to be putting something out there that official.
It's awesome. So the way that kind of academic journals and studies work in law school, at least, is that they're almost entirely student driven. So it's way different than like the medical field, where you'll have like research and studies that are peer reviewed. So they're studied by an individual professor or researcher, set among other people that are kind of in that position. Law school is completely different. So it's a journal. Professors and a lot of people in academia write notes or articles on different legal issues that are kind of spread throughout academic circles. Normally they're on a specific topic. Sometimes they're tied into law generally. Sometimes it's morality and law. Sometimes it's ethics and law. You're kind of tied into this weird dynamic. They then submit those notes or articles for publication to journals across the country. And there are normally primary journals and secondary journals that are at all these law schools. Go into this entire process is, again, kind of going back to that competition mindset that's around everywhere in law school, is you actually go through a write-on competition after your first year of law school. So for 2 weeks, you're given, at least how we do it at Notre Dame, is you're given an article that you have to edit using the Blue Book, which is like this massive, like, legal citation nerdy Bible of applying all these different citations and structures and formats to all legal journals. So you go through, it's like, how do you cite a case? Have to have your italics in the right spot, have to have the right, periods and commas in the right spot. And you get nitpicky. So it's this entire thing that you're kind of thrown into, and you're scored. And then you yourself write normally like a 2,500 word article or note on a topic that they give you using only the research that they're given to you. So it's this mindset where, like, you are thrown in the deep real quick for these 2 week long period to see what journal you get on and which one you're structured in there. So I got on the Notre Dame Journal of Law, Ethics, and Public Policy, which is one of the oldest journals here on campus, other than the Notre Dame Law Review. And we are kind of committed to putting out academic studies that are kind of through that lens of law, ethics, and public policy. So it's this really cool kind of position where I can use my background at GW, I can use my background in DC, and I could focus on what I want to do down the line to help further research or academic studies, in the field, in the entire field of law. And so as executive managing editor, I'm in charge of kind of helping everybody do their part to research our articles, edit our articles. I help kind of coordinate everything through the selection process. I help run the write-on competition for the students the year below me. I help the next editor-in-chief election make sure everything's kind of all set up for this journal process. And it's a really cool mindset because you're now in a position where you're helping students help the legal community at large.
Wow. Very impactful. Very impactful. And obviously you've got a lot on your plate too, making sure that everyone's T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
Yeah.
How did you become the executive managing editor? And how does it, a student comes in, they want to be a part of it. How do they get decided a position?
Yeah, so it's actually completely blind grading in the whole process through the write-on competition. You have no idea what each student is when you're doing it. So it's all based on merit. It's all, you consider your GPA scores, a small blurb on why you want to join that specific journal, and your write-on scores. So that's how I got picked for the journal. And then once I was on the journal, the other people around me just kind of trusted me to be that individual to kind of bring everything together. Like the editor-in-chief is one who's above me, make sure that all the editing process and everything is all tied in. I'm mainly on the other side of dealing with the people, making sure they're all coordinated and are getting everything together. And so it's I think a lot of it was I knew a lot of people on the journal. I was close and good friends with a lot of people on the journal, so they understood that I could kind of be in that spot to really help everyone by making sure that I knew everybody on it and what was going in there. So it was more of a personality hire, I think, than anything else, but it worked out well for me.
Well, it goes back to the idea of being engaged in the community and being a great person. Not you could be in that position if you weren't. So that's awesome. I'm sure, like you said, it's exposed you to a bunch. It's helped you see how we want to give back. You're in your last year now, which is crazy to think about. I'm sure you're like, wow, this is almost done.
Yeah.
After this whole journey of education's over, maybe there's more, who knows? But as far as it goes now, what's the next step after law school?
So there is more. So I'm actually going to get, I got a little bit more. So I'm going to do my Master's of Law in Taxation. So it's the LLM. To be honest, I don't know what the L and the L stand for. I'll just go with Master's of Law. Sounds a little better. But so I'm going to be, I'm actually back in the application process, finding the school for that. So I'm hoping to get into NYU or Georgetown for it, but luckily there's so many programs that are set up now that I can actually do it part-time and remote. So I got a job offer. I'm returning back home to Reno. I work for a phenomenal law firm, McDonald Carano. It's a Nevada-based firm that has offices in Reno and Las Vegas, and really does a bunch of different commercial practices. They do pretty much all areas of law except for family law and criminal work, which is like great for me because I have absolutely no desire to do either of those. Because I'm going into like a new field, a relatively new field. It's like family trust company work. So it's dealing with a lot of different family tax matters and issues that kind of impact high net worth individuals and different families that have their trusts or different states in the state of Nevada. So it's a really cool, unique field that really requires you to have a really complex understanding of the tax code. 3 years of law school can't really prepare you for. So you need that little extra fourth in there. And so it's this really cool spot. But I think that a lot of what law school prepares you for is the bar. So you get that kind of universal knowledge. It's going all the way across. So next steps right after graduation is driving back home to Reno and locking myself up and studying for that bar exam next July. So it's right back into it.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, hey, congratulations on making it.
Thank you.
Getting onto these next steps, figuring out that path. Like we were talking about, it's confusing for people. So you shedding light on this is awesome, and it's great to hear about the successes. As far as law school, we asked the question about undergraduate. If there was something that you could change about the way law school is structured, what would you suggest if you had the ability to suggest that?
So I think it goes right back to the same piece. It's just that practical work experience. There's a lot of, I think that you probably said it best earlier, is like you get a lot of exposure when you're given an issue, but you don't really know where to find the issues or what issues present to you. Because when you're meeting with a client, you don't really know, or excuse me, they don't really know what the actual legal issue is. They normally have like one big thing that they need done, and you need to figure out the facts to like help support their case to get them the best solution for it. So one thing that Notre Dame does, and I know a lot of other law schools do, but I think really needs to be a renewed emphasis, is clinical work experience. So I'm at the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative Clinic. So what we do is we work with clients around the country on freedom of religion issues. So I'm in a transactional section. So most of the work that I do is help establish religious-based 501c3 nonprofits all across the country. So we help in whatever capacity we can with whatever tax issues or general business issues, employment issues, transactional purchases, M&As, and stuff that are all tied into these faith-based organizations. And through that has been the most eye-opening, absolutely incredibly impactful field of my legal career and education in general. I'm meeting with people that have legitimate issues that are kind of screened by professors that we're working with, tied in and out, that are actual practicing attorneys. So all the work that we're doing with them is we're working, lock and key with actual attorneys, with actual clients on actual issues. And so it's a lot more meaningful than a large issue fact spotter that you're granted on an exam, right? I'm able to work with these people from the beginning of their journey. This is like their life journey, not just like a little piece that's tied into it. Like this is what they want to do for the rest of their life, and help establish these charities that are or organizations that are either helping people through their own faith, or helping serve their communities, or fighting legal challenges to their organizations, and helping people that are, we have another section that does litigation, that write amicus briefs for the Supreme Court on First Amendment issues. When you have a religious issue, there's that, just, you can't really get that anywhere else. It's absolutely insane. And so for the kids that are in that section, before you've even really stepped foot in a courtroom, or before you have even passed the bar exam, you're immediately learning how to make an impact in that field. And
Right.
that is like, bar none, the most important way to learn to become an attorney is by becoming an attorney and doing it the right way.
Absolutely. Well, and it's great that Notre Dame's been able to find the balance and give you that exposure, because I think that when you have a program that's not aligned in that sense, you have that dissonance between what the students hoping for, wanting for, trying to accomplish, and then their obligations in the classroom, right? Where they have to make sure they're grinding out those problem sets, make sure they're prepping in the ways that they'll be prepared for that test. And that creates a little bit of friction. So I love that you've been able to have that. I think that's so huge. You hit the nail on the head. That's wonderful. And golly, well, I'm super excited for you. We're gonna close this down now with some closing questions here, and whatever comes to your mind first, go for it. But the first one here: what is the most stressful part of being a student day in and day out?
Balancing your time. I think that's kind of the most important thing for it is because I think you have to remember that even while you're a student, you're still a person, you know? So you have to find the time to work with your others and get to know all the people that you're with now. And but most importantly, just prioritize being a normal, good human being and making those friendships that are going to last a lifetime. So I think it's really stressful when you're trying to figure out, like, man, I got like 50 pages of secure transactions reading tonight, but there's Monday Night Football game on too. And so it's kind of like balancing that whole piece for it. Honestly, is the most stressful piece of it. Or even to me too, I'm in my third year law school. Man, those cold calls in class are still so stressful. So you're tied in with it.
I bet. I've only seen that in movies, but I bet. Golly.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question. What would you say the most meaningful way for students to help each other is?
Uh, First of all, is not being afraid to ask questions and knowing what you don't know and being sure to be able to go out and ask those around you what they do know. Because no matter how competitive an environment you're going to be, there's still obviously good people in this world that are there to help you out. And I think taking that first step in being able to like kind of be vulnerable with the others, being like, hey, like I actually don't know this. Like there are a lot of things that I do know and I'm willing to help you on, but I need to ask you first. You know what I mean? And so having the courage and the humility to really open yourself up to asking others for help will in turn put you in a position to make a meaningful impact on their career and on their work and on their studies. So I think that having that kind of balance is really important to really impact those around you.
Really well said. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. Next question. You've touched on this. You said you want to give back, but what is your biggest hope to accomplish during time on Earth?
Uh, I think I think if I'm in a position to be able to help the state of Nevada and the people around me there in any way I can, that would be pretty awesome. But I think that it really starts at home. So I think the most important thing for me, definitely down the line, and where I'll be is being a good husband, being a good dad, and just really maintaining a strong priority of prioritizing my family and those around me above all else. Because I think that that'll help put perspective in my career and whatever I decide to do down the line. That'll really make me a better person to really kind of level out, that space around me.
I love that. Great answer. Great answer. Okay, next question. What is your top piece of advice for those who are early in their educational journey, still trying to figure it all out?
Don't figure it out right now. You don't have to figure it out right away. I think that trying everything and failing in some things is actually the best way of learning what you want to do and how you can do it. So I think there were plenty of times where I was uh, trying different internships out, and I went in there, and even on day one, I could kind of get like a feeling like, man, like campaign finance just is not going to be for me. So, but I exposed myself to it. I took the leap to kind of jump into this whole spot and being like, hey, like, this is something that I, maybe don't want to do, or maybe kind of want to do it, and kind of jumped into it because like from the time I was like in fourth grade on, I was like dead set, like dentist, orthodontist, like I'm gonna be set, like that's what I want to do. I get down to the first year of school, I'm like, whoa, maybe not. So like you got to take the time to try different things out to figure it out, and don't rush to figure it out right away, because you got a long legal career, you got a long education, you got 4 years of school at minimum, and if you're in college, and you're set to be able to put yourself out for there. So don't stress about it right away.
Great advice. Great advice. Ian, this has been awesome. I loved learning more about your path. You just were so informative. I think there's so much that a lot of people can gain from this. Where can they follow you, keep up with you, keep tabs on Ian DeValliere?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and add me on LinkedIn. Ian DeValliere, last name's hard to spell, so I hope you have it somewhere here on the YouTube page. And uh, Ian underscore DEV13 on pretty much all socials. But I'm happy to be a resource any way I can. Easy phone number. If you shoot me a DM, I'm willing to talk to anyone and everyone about it. I love kind of talking about this whole process, and be able to offer my story to help out any way I can. But feel free to reach out. I'm open book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian.
Yeah, for sure, Ali. Thank you.